Welcome to the Microsoft Security Insights Podcast with your hosts, Franklin Grimberg and Edward Walton, where we discuss Microsoft 365 security and Azure security news and products. Recorded July 6, 2022. Good evening, Franklin. Good evening, Brody. Don't know where Rod is. How you guys doing?
Two thumbs way up.
Two thumbs way up.
How are you?
Dude, I'm a little bit, I'm trying to help somebody get a Cisco firepower to send the logs to Sentinel. And I'm seeing a bunch of frustration, milestones in is that the data connectors for our, for Microsoft Sentinel are grossly under documented. And and if at least you're going to point to, the vendor site, use dynamic links. Don't send me a link to a firepower that was out 5 years ago, and it's a little bit frustrating because it's hard trying to navigate. I'm not a Cisco guy like I used to be, right? And so trying to navigate, but I actually have it in my lab. I can't duplicate it. And now I have an ASA in my lab. I think I don't know if I sent you one. I sent Rod one, but it's not modern enough to run the firepower management console. So we're trying to figure that out. I said, man, it shouldn't be that hard. I'm telling the customer. I said, it's nothing but Ceph. All this, the data connector's doing it is parsing and normalizing it for you. Just point to Ceph. Well, if we can see the data coming in, I'll write a quick parse, and then we'll go back and we'll do it. But it's that, and then I actually got to navigate around Checkpoint in Azure. So that was a good learning experience. I haven't touched Checkpoint since early in my career when they used to run on Nokia boxes, running BSD. I'm not, so I've never been a Nokia guy. But other than that, 4th of July was okay. Just so much work around the house. Semi-building a retaining wall. Barbecue. Had some friends over. Drink a lot of beer.
I heard.
Oh, yeah. Drink a lot of beer.
I had a quick call with Edward on Tuesday, and he's like, yeah, we had some people up here till 1 a.m. And I told him it's, we got to work in the morning.
I know, you got to go home.
Yeah.
The barbecue started at 3 o'clock. And they were still here, man, at 1:30. I said, you got to go home. You cannot be here.
You are so old.
Right?
I was sleepy.
Sleepy?
That's 1 o'clock?
Halfway through your REM cycle. Yeah, like he wakes up in 3 hours after that.
And right after that, I did. I was up at 3:30.
You sounded like it. You sounded like you were stoked to talk to me yesterday on our reoccurring call. So that was good timing.
I was tired. You can tell.
I can tell.
Thank you for being understanding. You're like,
I was going to ask you a bunch of questions and stuff. I'm like, let's just punt this till next month. That's fine.
Yeah.
I want to see a picture of your retaining wall. Very curious about this. I like landscaping. So if you could share that, I would love to see this.
It's about 6 feet high, about 40 feet long.
And it's at the edge of your property, or you're
on the back of my property. I'll send you pictures of it. Yeah, it's it was a work. I haven't shoveled so much red Georgia clay. Oh my goodness, But hey, it was a good workout. It was some way to relieve stress because I can't run. I'm still having problems with my knees, so I got it done. What else did I break? Play with Checkpoint. Play with Cisco ASA or Firepower, and was able to troubleshoot something that, first of all, I try to make it too complicated. When you're on the log collector, that's made by Azure, you got to read the fine print, because if you put Ceph and syslog on the same one, you duplicate the logs unless you tell which one's not to come in. The customer was doing that, right? So we figured that out, and I'm like, oh, I know what your problem is right here. I said, your second problem is your bill is so high, you still on pay as you go. You guys are bringing in like a half a terabyte a day. How did no one switch you over? And if you don't switch over at least once, and I think it defaults to it, our guest is going to be able to tell us. He's a Sentinel expert. But that's all that I did, and it is hot as is all get out in Atlanta. It's 102 degrees outside. It's so hot, I saw a bird walking. just would not fly, just walking down the street. Yeah, that's it. That's all I had. So tell me, you were going in. Tell me about what you did, bro. What were you up to?
This guy here?
No, you. See, I befuddled you right there. Yeah, you, man.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Yeah. My box configuration is different than your box configuration, probably. But yes. What did I? Well, I just got back from 2 weeks off, and man, getting back into work. Brand new fiscal year for Microsoft, which means time to start billing again, right? So I've got some carryover projects from last year. I'm going to be doing a Sentinel and Defender for Cloud Apps implementation with this company I love working with.
What?
Yeah, I know. And that's actually the first time I will be. So I'm pretty familiar with Defender for Cloud Apps. Still learning Sentinel because I don't have enough hands-on with it. We don't get it in our lab, right? I'd love to get access to your lab, Edward. Maybe I could send you a beer for access to your lab. I'd love to.
I keep giving Frank access to it, and I see all these attacks coming against my lab. I'm like, what is he doing now?
I know, right? He's just testing his botnet. You're just one of the testers, right?
Yeah. I'll get you access if you need something.
I just made I made the compliance setting so you can never delete any of your files.
Is that what's happening right now?
So
I happen to know a little bit about Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps, just a little bit.
Yes, I know you do, and I know our guest Gary is great on Sentinel, and everyone's good on it. So if you are unaware of where I play, listeners and viewers, so I generally work in the M365/modern workspace, and Sentinel lives in kind of the Azure side when it comes to Microsoft Consulting Services. Now, so that's why I haven't had the opportunity to deploy it yet, because it generally goes to other consultants. But because I built up trust with this customer, and because of this fantastic podcast and all of the research and learnings that I've ingested, including the SC200 over the months, I feel a lot more comfortable taking it on. So it's going to be my first Sentinel official gig. While I have evangelized the solution in the past, it's at my first deployment gig. And okay. I can't wait. I can't wait to finally get on it. And yeah, a lab environment would be great, because that's just the one thing I need. I need to be hands-on, right? I need to be spending the time, be able to do things on my own. And while Microsoft does supply a few broader community labs, I feel, I don't know, I get antsy about going in and wanting to do things in those. I feel like I'm going to break somebody's stuff without realizing it. So I'd rather break your stuff, Edward. Yeah.
Well, you know what? We've totally redid our lab, and we are extending external access. The GBB lab is not bad. Ren runs it, and Jeff Chen is actually pretty solid. We have a little bit of autonomy who we give access to it to, but you have to be, a blue badge. I'll give you access to our GBB lab.
Wow.
Matt Lowe, who was on the show early in the beginning, he sort of puts all the cool stuff in. Chris Baum used to be before he left. And so there are a lot of contributors going into it. So it's CyberX in there, Risk IQ, Cloud Knox. I think we're going to get a Proofpoint subscription coming up. We got the Google connectors and all that stuff set up. Big shout out to Jeff Schrogenberger. Took care of that because I was struggling.
Did you say that name right?
Yeah.
Wow, it sounded like you nailed it. Yeah.
Well, I know him. I knew him from Federal, so it was easy to say his name. And then, you and I can talk offline. I'll make sure you get the research. And then the other thing is, that's more important than the lab. Don't you struggle. If you need me on the calls, you need some help, just say, hey, man, can you just...
Oh, thanks,
man. And I need to send you the POC document for Sentinel that Jeff Chen created at Microsoft. Big shout out to Jeff Chen and Ren. It's a good reference to understand how to navigate the conversation to the point where customers always want the free before they go into the third party, which is not free, but this gives you an outline so that you're not bouncing all over the place, right, in your structure. But I'll get that to you. It's actually pretty good. I'm rewriting it. Jeff Chen asked me to rewrite it because I'm writing a couple of blogs on, and I hate this term, best practices for log ingestion.
So you mean there's one set of practices that works for everybody, Edward? That's amazing.
Yeah, I over my big fat mouth. So now I'm on a hook for it. So I'm going to do it. It's been enlightening to actually see it. I think that the only thing that's a little bit of a rub is that our documentation never keeps up with the third party stuff. Because I'm clicking on some, I'm like, but we can talk about that later. But other than that, man, you good? I see. After our talk on whatever day we had, you still haven't got a haircut.
I did. I have not got a haircut yet, Edward. Thank you for noticing. Thank you. Your bowling ball's looking shiny as ever since we're commenting on one another's appearance. But yeah, no haircut yet, but we're hosting a Stampede party next week. And so I'll get a haircut before that. It's the Calgary Stampede. It's the greatest outdoor show ever. If you've ever been to Calgary, come check it out. It's hilarious. It's like a week and a half.
You just aged me. What is it again?
It's called the Calgary Stampede, and it shouldn't age you because it's been around for like 100 years. I'm pretty sure. The Calgary
in the United
Stampede.
States, we call that cow punching.
Cow punching. Cow punching. I don't think you're allowed to cow punch here. I think they have rules on the events.
That's it's a loose term.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Hey, we'll connect, man. I was in a crappy mood until I got on the call and I see you guys. Now I'm in a better mood.
Good.
Yeah. Franklin, what about you, man? What's up, bro?
Franklin.
Well, I'm happy to decrease Brody's confidence with the SC200 because this week the SC200 has been updated, the learning paths with new content. So a lot of the changes in Sentinel are out there, even talking about async parsers and all that. So all of that now is published in Learn. I think that if you're taking the actual instructor-led courses, that stuff should be out soon. New labs will be published very soon, new PowerPoints for the instructors. So, but the Learn content is actually updated with the current SC200 course.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to go out and get caught up with everything that you're missing from when that class was originally developed, which was before the unified portal was released, things
Mm-hmm.
like that. So it's definitely restructured for that. So you have to get up to. You're already behind, Brody. You're already behind.
I'm always behind. I work in technology. I'm constantly behind.
And then also I saw all the MVPs got their renewal status. So congratulations, MVPs out there.
I Franklin, I got a lot of sway. I'm sort of a big
mover and a shaker.
Oh yeah.
Maybe one day I'll be an MVP.
I have no idea who you pissed off. How many times have I nominated you? and you. Hey, oh yeah, who's the guy you want to do? I said, good buddy of mine. Maybe the podcast. Okay, for sure. Just where there, Franklin Grimber. You know Franklin, huh? I just kidding. Oh, Franklin that stands people up for lunch and dinner that don't show up.
Hey, listen. I'm hearing that you and Brody have a monthly or a weekly call. You're sending them all sorts of stuff. I mean, access to whatever labs. I'm like, okay. What's the deal?
Well, the deal
you want to
is,
get on a monthly call, Franklin? I'll schedule a call with you. You get me your schedule. We'll buddy up.
The difference is between Brody and I. Brody's a friend. You family, so we treat family bad.
Okay.
We treat family bad.
Didn't go the way I thought it would. Yeah. Right.
And I have to ask you guys. I mean, Brody's always on vacation. You're always on vacation, right? Oh. I mean, what do you guys only work 2 months out of the year at Microsoft?
Listen, Franklin,
what's the deal?
Big tech, it's very high stress, but we work hard, we play hard here at Microsoft. Mm-hmm. I don't know what it's like for non-MVPs in their work environment, but it's just.
I guess I'm not working hard enough, huh?
Well, you're not dedicated. You're not dedicated like we are. I had Wi-Fi on the plane. I was doing a work and I didn't have good reception, so I walked out on the wing.
Wi-Fi on the plane? Did you have a screen protector? Were you working on confidential materials?
It's cold at 35,000 feet, but the computer runs faster. The computer starts running faster.
Yes,
so say that like, I do that. But man, it sounds like it's a slow week. To our listeners that can't make any assumptions, but everybody must know Microsoft's end of fiscal year occurs on June 30th. This is a typical time where people at Microsoft, especially salespeople, they hit their numbers. They go ghost. You won't see them anymore for at least a week. Then they come back, and then everybody starts taking. Well, in the old days, this was getting ready to be the start of conference time. Ready, Inspire, and all this other stuff. But I heard on good source that some of these things are happening, but not able to disclose. We don't know what's going on. Ignite is going to happen. I think maybe used to be one of my favorite gatherings and everything, but everything's good. So, well,
Sweet.
Franklin, sound like you haven't done anything this week.
That's why he's not an MVP. Franklin, let me know when you need me to add to the list of people who nominate you. I'd be happy to do it again. And listeners, everybody listening out there who works at Microsoft, let's get a small army together to help push forward Franklin's nomination for the next round of MVPs. Because what an all-star.
Everybody in Microsoft would, except for the SharePoint team. They got it out for him. The SharePoint team's got it out for him. They're going to get him. But hey,
maybe it's the person that does the nomination too.
That is true.
Like, Brody's nominated me. Edwards nominated me. I think it's up to Rod to give it a try. That's the deal.
That's the true move. And our guest on the call wouldn't be a bad person to or a favor to. So
who's our guest on the call, Edward?
Well, who's our guest? I'm glad you asked. So our guest is a Microsoft MVP, Azure consultant, security advisor, a guru. I give accolades to those that are really good, but I give accolades to those who are really good, but keep it very normalized, right? I love reading his blog. I can almost see him sitting with his Fruit Loops in his bowl or watching cartoons on Saturday or doing something. I
can't find cartoons on Saturdays.
Everything's on Cartoon Network. But so I'd like to introduce and let him do his own introduction. Gary Bushey. You have another person in the Microsoft ecosystem who's been in as long as you. His name is very similar. His name is Ravenbus. I thought you guys were related, but he was used to be an old Ranger, Exchange Ranger, him and I way back in the day. And I was like, oh, he must be related, but it's totally not related. So we got him on the show to talk about security, technology, what drives him, and maybe make some announcements if he wants to share in his personal thing, especially around his professional career. He can do that. So without further ado, Gary.
Thank you.
Please. Yeah.
But I hate to start off with correcting you, but I'm not an MVP.
You MVP in my book.
Oh, I was also rejected as being nominated for an MVP.
Do you know what MVP stands for in this podcast? The M stands for Microsoft Security Insights Valuable Player. That's what you are. Right? So you're on this, Oh,
you got some sleep today. You're good on the jokes.
I know, man. I slept.
Well, we'll say years and years ago, I was a Microsoft SharePoint MVP back when it was, all on-prem.
So I'll give a trivia question before we let you get into your show. What was the old name? And to our listeners, they can get it to me in Discord and or Twitch and or the Zoom chat. If they are, I don't know if you can chat in Zoom. What was the name of the MVP program before they started calling it Microsoft MVP? It used to be called Calvin's List because the first MVP was a Microsoft Access developer. So I didn't know that. I read it in Code Magazine, and they were like, "Oh my God, the very first MVP used to be called Calvin's List, and he was a lead developer for Access." I'm sorry, not Access. No, FoxPro.
I think we.
FoxPro.
Okay, FoxPro I can understand.
FoxPro. What did I say? Access.
Yeah.
Who were you saying it was?
It was Calvin. I can't think of his last name. Yeah.
I have a very long history with FoxPro, so
yeah.
Back in the day. So
he's one of the very first ones, and they used to call it the Calvin's List, and then they changed it to MVP. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we have somebody in chat saying, was it called SkyDrive?
Yeah, as Microsoft had that played out while we have OneDrive. No, it wasn't SkyDrive. So, but Gary, tell us a little bit about yourself. What drives you? What's your passion? And what threats of punishment coerced you to coming on our show?
Well, actually, I thought Rod was going to be here, but he's not. So, yeah. Let's see what drives me.
B squad. Sorry, Gary. Yeah.
Well, to get me on, you're scraping the bottom of the barrel. Anyway.
No. Go ahead.
Well, as anybody that knows me knows, I really love technology and computers. I have been doing Actually, I wrote my first professional program when I was in 6th grade. I sold it to a local apartment complex to, monitor the rent and everything like that. Back on a Commodore 64. So much fun. I've
Nice.
been doing a lot of development work, and then I switched into Azure. And the funny thing is, I kind of accidentally got into the security. I was doing Azure architecture, and then we had this guy come in, Richard Diver, who's also with Microsoft now. He came in and gave this presentation on a product called Sentinel. And then he asked if anybody would help him set it up. And that's pretty much what I was doing in Azure. So I said, sure, I'll help you. Well, that turned out into me running Sentinel for him and then being a consultant for Sentinel. And then he had this great idea, let's write a book on Sentinel. So we did that. And actually, Rod was our tech reviewer on it. And then we wrote the second one, which is weird because it's only the second edition of the first book, but they changed the name. So it looks like the second book.
It's really it's the same thing, except for from Azure is Microsoft Sentinel.
Right, exactly. Well, the
Yeah.
fun part about that is we were ready to publish it, and then Microsoft decided to change the name of Azure Sentinel to Microsoft Sentinel.
Control
So
F.
we had to go back, change all the text. We couldn't change the images because even though it was renamed, the portal still said Azure Sentinel.
Yeah.
So there's a big disclaimer in the beginning of the book about the renaming. But
Yeah. Big shout out to Richard Driver. I know him well. He's a very good dude. He was on that business development side over there. He's either peer or he worked for Madonna back in the day. But yeah, Richard's solid guy. You got to get him on the show. Matter of fact, I'll make a note.
Definitely.
Get Richard on the show.
Gary, how tough of a tech reviewer was Rod? And feel free to just rant about Rod at this stage.
I wouldn't say he was tough, but he was very thorough. He
I could
definitely
see
brought
that.
up a lot of good points. He was able to answer a lot of the questions that I had listed in the comments, but definitely didn't let me get away with anything.
Okay. Good to
Of course,
hear.
Richard did most of the business side, so I got all the technical side. So I got to talk with Rod more. But yeah, definitely kept me honest.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, that's cool. So 2 editions of the Sentinel book. What's it called?
The first one is Learn Azure Sentinel, and then it got renamed to Microsoft Sentinel in Action.
Cool. Awesome. And so as you were going through the process, getting the book published, etc., you're obviously very familiar with the technology. What was something that maybe you learned or discovered along the creative process to getting that published?
Oh, I learned quite a bit. When you're writing the book, there's always this thing about the best way to learn is to watch it, do it, teach it. And I was going through the book with the teach it mentality, and I was like, well, I don't really understand how this works thoroughly enough. So I had to delve in even more to figure out exactly how it worked and then write it out.
Nice.
Now, I was telling one of my coworkers the other day that I wrote the chapters, went back, reread them. It was crap. So then I rewrote them. At least the first run is to get everything out that you want. Then you go back and rewrite it so it's understandable.
Cool.
It's a great experience. I would recommend everybody doing it once. I don't know about twice, and I don't think I'm going to do a third one.
Okay, that was going to be my next question. It was not did you ever earlier in your career think that you would have your name on a published technical guide?
Never. It was not even on my bucket list. And then when Richard brought it up, I was like, yeah, I'll give it a shot.
Cool. Well, that's a great accomplishment.
Yeah, it takes a lot to be able to convey what your expertise is into a manner that's consumable, so people can read it and follow you, which goes back to what I said. I'm a fan of your writing style, right? I know sometimes you have to alter it because Packet or Amazon or whomever publishes your book say you got to do it this way, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, but you couldn't have a better technical writer than Rod. His criticism is always underlined by learning. He's teaching if he's saying something's on there, and which is why I'm a big fan of him also. So you were talking about. I'm sorry, I'm having bandwidth technical difficulties. My video says it's on, but it's actually not on. Give me a second here. Looks like it came back on. Okay. Problems. I don't know what's going on. But
we have a Richard Driver in the chat.
We do?
Do we?
Oh, lot.
Oh yeah, look at that.
Yeah, look at that. Big shout out, Richie. Gonna come
Oh
on the show?
yeah.
Richard
The
Diver.
White Hat Defender is saying they like to recommend a guest. So yeah, please put that in the chat there,
Okay.
or do a direct message to me, or join our Discord and do a direct message.
Yep. So I've seen your work. I've seen the things you do. I read your blog. I definitely use it as a reference and everything, but it still doesn't give me an idea. What's your passion? What do you like to do? Because when you're good at everything, you can do anything, but what do you like to do?
I really like, I mean, my whole career coming into Azure was on development. So I love developing. Right. Actually, today I wrote a quick little, well, not that quick, but a PowerShell program which will export the MITRE page that we have in Sentinel into Excel so that we can do some pivots and reports off of that. I love learning something like that. Love learning all sorts of new stuff. I play with the APIs all the time just to figure out how they're being used. Anything new, definitely want to try.
You tell me now that I'm listening to you talking. Let me tell you who you remind me of. A friend of the show and a two-time guest. You remind me of Nathan Swift. That's who you remind me of. I don't know if you know Nathan.
No, I don't.
Nathan Swift is all right. He's solid. Yeah, I need to catch up. Nathan, come back on the show. But yeah, I'm glad you wrote that. I'm going to go look at it because I think the closest I've ever done anything that's really productive and consumable by the community is that a previous Microsoft peer, and he's somewhere else now, named Andrew Corona. Him and I authored the ability way back to download all the queries that was ever written inside of a Sentinel environment. So that way you could have them in text file and then give them to someone if they wanted it, right? And all you got to do is cut and paste and put it in the thing. It's been refined so many times right now. It's actually really, really useful now that we figured out how to import them, which is actually pretty good. But thank you for that. I'm definitely looking at your site right now. So if we're looking away, we're not being rude. We got like 3 screens and Discord's over here, and Twitch is up there, and then everything's over here. So, you know, do you want to tell everybody about where you are now right now? Can we tell everybody where you are?
Yeah.
Okay.
As of 7 days ago, I joined Microsoft again. So I am a Microsoft Sentinel CXE on the go-to production team.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Is that Kara's team?
Yes.
It is. Big shout out, Kara. Got you on the list. You'll be coming in August. So
Gary, this means that you can help our army of MVP nominations for Franklin next cycle. Yeah. Franklin, maybe you should just get a job at Microsoft. Just throwing it out there. You know, it's a step up above MVP.
I'm sorry that I'd have to get rid of my ego to actually join, is what I was told. So I can't do that.
Oh, is that right? Okay. So you're gonna go to CXE. Love everybody over there. You're probably gonna be working with Chris Munez.
Yep. I actually worked with him before.
Yeah.
The very first Sentinel contract I ever did was with Chris.
Chris is solid. That young man has so much potential. He's been on the show. Shout out to you, Chris. Come back on the show. I'll catch up with him. He's up in New York. But in Sentinel, there is so much. You can almost build a career out of the feature sets in Sentinel. Add them 2 or 3 together like this. I'd like to ask you about what are your favorite technology things inside of that cloud-based SIEM, which is Microsoft's thing. Because Franklin, he loves watch lists. Oh my God. He dreams about watch lists. But give me your top 3 favorite things inside of Sentinel. And you say, hey, if you need to either convince, close the deal, or keep the process moving, you need to showcase these 3 things in Sentinel, and the customer will bite.
Well, definitely automation, including the playbooks. Like every time I go out to a customer, the one thing that they say is we don't want any L1s anymore. We want that to be fully automated. And you do that through automation. The analytic rules, obviously, I mean, you need to be able to do the querying.
Love that.
And I really like the incident management. My last team, we did our incident management completely inside of Sentinel. Nothing left Sentinel.
I can see that. You say incident management. Is that synonymous with incident response?
Yes.
Okay. Because Big shout out to Gene. He actually, as far as I know, he was the first to write the Teams integration before the engineering team at Sentinel put it inside the product. And I'm like, oh my God, you just created a war room. And then, there you go. But big shout out to Gene. He was on our Reactor show last month. And he's a documentation guru. I guess he's falling up under tutelage of Mark Simos. Shout out to you, Mark Simos. You can come on the show. Only going to cost you $20.
A lot of shout outs. You're gonna charge Mark to come on the show?
That's right. Mark has to pay.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Well, Gary, did you get a chance to see Jing's visual episode on MS Reactor last month?
I believe so.
Okay, where he was showing off how to get the console and all the fun that you can set up.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Gene. Okay. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gene, he's rock solid. He's an asset to anybody team you get him on. He's actually helping me out with this Cisco Firepower log integration thing, right? He's like, man, just ping me up. Let's get on Teams. Let's figure it out. And so I love that, which is I love camaraderie of technology and everything, because you can't know everything, right? Unless you're Franklin, and you know everything, right? But so you gave me your top three. You're going over to the customer experience team for Sentinel. What are your duties and mission statement once you get there? Because I know everybody does it, but what's going to be your superpower there?
That is a good question. We haven't really figured out where I'm going to be, quote unquote, the expert. It's probably going to be around the development, around running those quick little PowerShells, solutions, repositories, things like that.
Yeah, I see experience, no pun intended, is getting very, very good. As Sentinel, Master 8 gets older, gets more mature. And so the CXE is hugely important, because the very nature of the title, you've gotten the customer to bite, you've gotten the customer to either soft deploy, full deploy, displace, run alongside something. What often causes individuals, which is a nuance, it's a curse and a blessing with Sentinel. Customers have a bad experience tend to turn it off. It has nothing to do with the product, right? It has to do with their level of skill. So I'm a big proponent of skilling the customer up in advance so that you lower those non-spoken anxieties about it. Because if you tell a guy who's been doing Splunk for 15 years, he got to go do this, right? I know Splunk's been around 15 years. He's not gonna, he's not gonna expose his anxiety about learning a new technology. He's just gonna say, oh, the technology's dumb. Who does this, right? So I think skilling is one thing, and Franklin is a big time skiller. He's a contributor. Oh my God, Franklin is, he contributes to this stuff because he believes that the acknowledgement game is. So yeah, that's one of the things that get done. Yeah.
And you're right. It's you need to have a good initial experience. It can't just be dump, here you go. That's something we try to do with our consulting practice is education, right? And not just like here it is, go deal with it. You can't. That's just not an appropriate way to stand up such an important piece of your security landscape. You need to make sure people are on board and they're trained and they're comfortable. Maybe that means a demo environment previous to get some familiarity with it, but you got to have a good first experience, absolutely, or otherwise it turns into another one of those products that you've got configured maybe 5-10% and you're paying for, but you're not really getting full value out of it, which I think a lot of enterprises have these days. It's point solution sitting over here, it's not really being utilized. Let's buy the new thing, but if we don't leverage the new thing properly, it's just going to end up like one of the other dozen or so solutions that's out there. So those are really good points, Edward.
Yeah, you got to keep the customer engaged, and I'm, one of the things I like doing, and Gary, I'd like to get your opinion on this, sir. I'm not a big fan of POCs, right? The technology works, so I've been trying to, behind the scenes, change the way that our sellers in the field, our engineers, our consultants, everybody say, let's get more into proof of use and proof of value, right? Give me scenarios that I can leverage against rather than say, this is the painful logs. This is KQL. This is so-and-so. A customer says, I was just recently doing this. And he said, well, you're the one that railed against the POC, Edward. Give me a POU. I said, you give me a scenario. He said, we have a malware break. I said, how do you want to approach it? He said, command line. So we started going into KQL and doing it. And he said, all right, let me see what the GUI is like. So what do you think is an approach to get customers to more readily adopt the technology outside of training them in advance? On Microsoft Sentinel specifically.
Well, it's just like you said, you have to show them why is it going to be useful to them, or is it just going to be yet another SIM that just sits there? You know, they'll look at the incidents once in a while and it's like, okay, yeah, false positive, true positive, without understanding the benefits of the entire product and how it's going to benefit the company. And, you know, each company is going to have different use cases and it's going to benefit them in different ways. So you have to understand the customer and understand how is Sentinel going to help them. Is it going to replace a SIM, or is it going to be working side by side? Where are you going to get your data from? All that. So it's like you were saying, it's more proving to them that it's going to be useful.
And I think the onus of that cannot solely rest upon the technical expertise of Microsoft. The sellers in the field have to up their game. You're only going to get a limited amount of attention span from the customer, right? And so you got to be able to, you know, I don't ever expect any of the sellers to be level 300, 400, 500, whatever it is. But you got to minimize the amount of time, in my opinion, that you tell the customer, let me get one of my experts on the phone. So the low hanging fruit, 100, 200 should already be covered where the customer says, okay, I see that you have parity against the big boys. So you have the feature set. Tell me how to do it. And go that route, right? And big shout out to Rod Trent for must learn KQL.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had to go back and go through it because I learned KQL absolutely the wrong way, right? And so, but now I'm getting better. I'm not, you know, like Franklin or Rod and anything, but you know, I can cut and paste with the best of them.
Hey man, I love the clipboard. That's half my job.
Big shout out to the VS Code engineering team. There's more features coming to VS Code all the time. I love it. Yeah, right. You can do all these things. Doubt. So you're coming on board at Microsoft. I think you've already said that to everybody. You're going to be in CXC. Are you focused on a particular vertical? Finance, healthcare?
I don't actually have any customers yet, so I'm not sure how that works. But
if you want some customers, I got some. You can have.
Talk to Kara.
Yeah. I do that, right? I do need to talk to Sarah. Okay. You know, your expertise inside security, you said you sort of backed into it and you were a developer, but give me a little bit of insight on what was your Azure experience? Because when I first got introduced to Azure, I was a migration expert. I come from a networking background, so ExpressRoute was something that I learned first because it was easy, low-hanging fruit. But how did you get introduced to Azure?
Funny thing is, I was actually with a large consulting company working as a SharePoint consultant. They had a contract for Azure with a large agricultural company, and they didn't have anybody to fill in the Azure role. And I was on the bench, so they said, all right, you're an Azure consultant now. Go learn it.
Love it. Especially coming from SharePoint.
Yeah.
That's great.
You know,
hey, do you have a pulse, Gary? Can you work in Azure? Great. Hop on over. We got a project for you. Yeah.
I know that juxtaposition and that mind shift because SharePoint Online wasn't around.
Not at that point, no.
No, because I used to be a collaboration guy. I was back from the BPOS days, and then Exchange 2003. There was no SPO, so I knew that had to be a total mind shift for you to like, where do I install the servers? You know, where do I put this right here? You know,
this was actually Windows Azure. I think it was called before.
Yes, yeah, the old
Windows Azure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
really.
It was before ARM templates.
Yeah, it was all the classic. It was all IS at the very beginning.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
That's how I cut my teeth on it. I was helping with lift and ship, and then we didn't have Azure Migrate back in the day. We had we bootleg Azure Site Recovery to do migrations, and until such time Microsoft bought whatever the company is with that. So we were using ASR to be able to migrate workloads over to cloud. Painful.
I did have one contract where we were doing backups, Azure backups, with a company, and the company was US, but we were doing it in China. So they wanted to do everything inside of Azure, which really wasn't recommended. But it just so happened where they were hosting their or quote unquote on-premises servers was in the same location as the company that ran Azure in China. So literally all we had to do was get somebody to run a cable from their machines into the Azure machines.
Sometimes the most simplest way, man. Sometimes hey, Cat 6 baby, running across, drip it over your shoulder and run and get it done. I get it. What is I forget what the channel Azure offering is. It like level 23 or it has
Bayonet 22, I think.
Something like that.
Bayonet 22. I think that's the ISP that it's hosted on, but don't quote me on that. I'm not.
Yeah, don't quote me. Yeah,
I forget who it was, but it was just so hilarious that we were getting such incredible speed and throughput just through the one cable.
I keep it. What's the old thing for? I'm gonna date myself. You remember back in the day, you were very conscious about, because I'm old. You know, I'm actually the oldest guy on the call. I'm older than all of you guys. Yeah, I am.
Are you sure?
I'm pretty sure, man. My social security, my social security number says 007. So.
All right.
No, my listeners, we talk about my birthday. I'll be 54 this year.
Me too.
Yeah. So when's your birthday?
August.
But I say don't put personal information out there. You know, these hackers. Yeah, I'm October, so you are older than me.
I'm not actually happy that I won that.
Frank has something to say. Go ahead, Franklin. Franklin, you're on mute. Mute's a powerful button. I'm telling you.
Hardware mute.
I'm already at 54.
Oh. Well, gentlemen, I am not 54. Just throwing it out there. So, winner.
Yeah. I'm proud of my age. I'm seasoned. I understand the value of good liquor rather than the cheap stuff. Right there, you go.
Yeah, you're well aged.
Franklin, any questions for our guests?
Yeah, you're breaking up when you're saying that.
My internet.
I've been having fun in chat. I actually dealt with a publishing situation for the labs that are being published right now, and so I have not been paying as much attention as I normally do, to be honest with you. So,
wow,
but the chat has been a lot of fun tonight. So,
yeah, look at that chat. Hey, let's shout out to chat. Shout out to everybody in chat. Thanks for joining us live. And make sure if you're in chat, you join our Discord so we can spam you and you can ask questions to the community. And, there's actually, I would say, Franklin, I don't know about you, and I don't know, Gary, if you've been on the Discord, but we've got a pretty decent Discord community now where people can toss questions out there and get some responses and some feedback. It's a nice little niche we've carved out, wouldn't you say?
I like having a small community that's asking the right questions, not, just hey, let's try to get as many people in as we can and push things to them. I mean, it's really the community is there really to help each other. So I think that's it's nice to have for people to get to.
Yeah, no doubt.
We're getting Edward in here.
And the Discord has probably been one of the best mediums we've had for helping individuals who've reached out to us. Hey, I'm at work. How do I do this? I'm running to this configuration. We've actually had a couple of people get hired by virtue of listening to the podcast, asking for skilling up questions, and they've gone on at Microsoft. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Big shout out, Asif, one of our listeners and supporters. He's over in the UK, and he's said, "Man,
Brody."
Say right now,
Brody, when you first started, Brody actually has been started listening to the podcast since episode 1. Were you actually working at Microsoft at that point?
No, I wasn't. No, so I only got into podcasts to figure out a way of studying for my CISSP while I was like walking the dog or driving because it was such a monster for me. And then I'm like, oh, I should keep doing this podcast thing. Now I'm starting to specialize in Microsoft security. And I was working for a partner, and I just literally searched in Google Podcasts, Microsoft security, and you guys were the first one. I mean, there's obviously the Azure security one as well, but I was, again, still focused in the kind of the M365 sphere. And and the rest is history. And then you for some reason invited me on as a guest, and you definitely stumped the chump me multiple times on that call. Like, hey, Brody, what's this thing? I'm like, oh, I don't know the answer to that. I'm freaking out.
Well,
Never have you back on.
we never did that. We were just trying to get you to choose side. Franklin and I had a secret war going on. He knew that MCAS was my favorite product. MD was his.
Right.
We were building our battle sides. Whose side are you on, right?
Right.
And to everybody that's actually watching us on Twitch, if I keep going in and out, it seems like every Wednesday I have bandwidth issues or something that's going on. So I don't know what's going on. Maybe because my wife is downstairs watching Real Housewives or wherever.
Oh, no, she's booby trapping it, so you make sure you go to your dinner.
Exactly. Well, Gary knows the deal. Yeah.
Oh, Gary, how about to say, how did you know?
Yeah.
Well, funny thing is, it may be a coincidence, but I started watching this, and now I work for Microsoft.
There you go.
There you go, Gary. Nailing it. Why, don't even need to be an MVP when you work for Microsoft, right, Franklin?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's
right. Hey, Frank's gonna get you sooner or later.
I know.
So we still have a good amount of time left. Gary, tell me, give me one or two of your most interesting deployment scenarios, or tell me something that you deployed within security and Microsoft security stack. You like, man, this is cool. I enjoy doing this.
Great question.
Let's see. Well, the one that's always going to be nearest and dearest to my heart is the very first Sentinel deployment that I did for a NBA basketball team that has some connections to Microsoft. I don't know if I can actually say which one it is, but it's the first one I did. So that's always, it's first time. We did have one with a luggage company where we had to do some creativity because half of their environment was in the US and the rest was in Europe. Mm-hmm. European have, as you know, a lot more different rules. So that's the first time we actually used Lighthouse. I think it had just come out. So we had an Azure Sentinel in Europe just for the Office 365 information, and everything else was in the US with Lighthouse. We had Lighthouse set up different ways because we were an MSSP. So we had Lighthouse going to the US, we had Lighthouse going to Europe, and then the customer also had Lighthouse going to Europe so that they could see what was going on as well. Mm-hmm. And it worked out really well because the European Sentinel instance didn't cost them anything because Office 365 information was free at that time, the alerts. Mm-hmm. And then everything else was in the US. So that it was complicated to begin with. Now it's a lot easier with Lighthouse.
Yeah. So Lighthouse would have intimidated me at the very beginning. However, prior to Lighthouse, I had experience with HashiCorp, Terraform. Mm-hmm. So I knew the concept of what they were trying to do, right, with the the transformation files. But yeah, when they started the Lighthouse Worldwide Community Contributor and everything, I jumped in there and learned as much as I can. It has evolved. It's getting better and better, and especially now that people realize there are very few enterprise customers are going to be single cloud. But just that is not a reality. That's not a reality. Everybody's going to use everybody else's stuff, right?
So I've got some
pretty cool.
I've got some questions. Now, since I'm getting out of the chat mindset and coming over here, let's talk about Windows security event connectors, old versus new. What are you recommending? Why? And what are the rules for you?
I would recommend new if it works for your environment. The new still doesn't have the full capabilities, and it actually lists out in the main page as what is it missing. And actually, I don't think Rod wrote it, but he posted in his blog on Twitter the public preview for the migration tools for Azure Monitor Agent was just released today.
Really?
If you have the old system, you can work to get it up to the Azure Monitor Agent.
I know that a lot of my customers deploy the workbook to track the migration status. You can see the old ones with it, but that's pretty cool. You said something that sparked something I want to share on the show. My peer, Ren, put it out. Ren Yuri. I got his name. I could not pronounce his last name.
I always wondered what that was. How do you pronounce that? Yuri?
Yuri. That's his name. I asked him. We were together 3 weeks ago. We met up in Reston, and I was with Frank. And I said, "Sir, I don't take this as a slide." I said, "Ren, pronounce your last name for me."
And you invite him to dinner with us. Go ahead. That's fine.
Yeah, I did invite this. Right. I needed some private time with you, right? So we got that going.
A candle?
Yeah. A little bit, and hot food that he had me eat that had my head sweating. That food was hot. Not hot to him, but that food was hot, spicy hot. So Ren posted something to our listeners. Go check this out. I'm sorry I don't have the URL really available, but now this is something I thought you could always do, and maybe I just was able to work around it. But now you can manually create incidents. Am I the first person that thought that this was something that was always there because we found a way to do it? But Gary, did you read that disclosure also?
I saw it in public for private preview. I didn't know it was public.
It's private preview, so it's not private where we can't talk about it in a podcast. It is public knowledge, but if you want to be in the private preview program, you have to join it. And Christina Quick and Ashley Martin and Jason Cohn. So those are the ones you probably need to get into. Any of our listeners that are customers and consumers, if you're not in the Microsoft private preview program for all the security products, you are wrong. Don't be wrong, be right.
I was going to say the same thing. Oh, we got there. Sentinel Black Belt. Nice.
Oh, they sent you a real thing.
Oh, yeah. If you do enough of the private previews and pass the ninja training, you can get the stickers.
Christina
Quick. I actually do not attend those on purpose.
Here we go. Why, Franklin?
Because when you have to write content in courseware, you actually can only do it for what is available there. And knowing what's coming down the road, it's actually very, when you know that you're writing something that's going to have to change 1 month later, it just drives you nuts.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see that.
All right, I got a question for you, Gary.
Okay.
When I walk, let's say I've got a desktop, right? And I have a few servers. What, am I doing Defender for Endpoint while also doing Sentinel? What's your opinion for Sysmon? Where is all that laid out for the different scenarios of bringing servers and I should say endpoints, servers and client machines into Sentinel? What is your recommendation for that?
I would definitely say if you have it, use Defender for Endpoint as your first line of defense. It is written specifically to handle that kind of information. Actually, as he's on, so I can't take credit for it. Diver told me this: think of Sentinel as a backstop, catching everything else that gets through the other systems. Or if you have information coming from other cloud environments, that's where Microsoft Sentinel really shines.
Yeah, I've had customers ask me, like, man, I have E5 all up and I have the unified portal, which has gotten more enhanced, right? Because now the individual portals in there. Why do I need Sentinel? Well, Sentinel's for things that are non-Microsoft centric, and it's an aggregator of all signals.
Exactly.
Right? So
would you put the client, the Sentinel data connector client, on the same machine as Defender for Endpoint to collect both, or would you just say let Defender for Endpoint feed it and leave it at that?
It would depend on what the machine's doing.
That's a good question. That's
if it's a desktop, your personal machine, probably not. But if it's doing some server work, it would definitely be something I would consider.
I would also expand that a little bit, as I'm getting my hands a little bit dirty because I got a project I need to bone up on. Is that don't sleep on Defender for Cloud and Azure Arc. You got to do these things for these multi clouds, right? So I'm relearning, and once again, Brody, I'm well rested. Big shout out to Matt from the Azure Arc team. Come on to the podcast, Brody. Help me out.
I think that everybody gets freaked out about Azure Arc. I mean, the only thing they should be freaked out about is the fact that there's an additional agent going on the machine. So, but overall, I mean, I've heard people say, "Well, do you know Azure Arc? We have to put these connectors on the machines. We got to make sure that you know how to do Azure Arc." It's like, I'm like, you don't realize how much you're overstating the effort involved to implement Azure Arc from a management standpoint for these threat protection clients or services that are out there. Now, Azure Arc for deploying services across clouds and so on, yeah, there's more involved with that. So I think that people, are seem for some unknown reason terrified of Azure Arc, which I don't get. I think it's easy enough to deploy.
Well, it's a moniker of using the term agent, and if you are an operations guy, that's one more thing you have to worry about and troubleshoot. But it's just like, it's the way you say it. I'll give you an example. When I always go back to things that are non-technical before I put together a talk track for a customer, because you can't anticipate all pushback, but if you listen enough, you know exactly what they're going to go to. They're reading from a script. So saying, agent is like saying, do you believe global warming is real? Oh my God, this is made up, blah, 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 blah. But then if you go a little bit around and say, what about climate change? Now, climate change is real. Okay. So it's just like the agent thing is like, do you realize your antivirus software is an agent?
Yeah, good call. But I get it. You're the point. Yeah, you're hilarious analogies. But yeah, agent has that stigma attached to it. Oh, it's like Defender for Identity. Oh, I don't want an agent on my domain controllers. That's bad, right? But in the end, you want that hook to the endpoint to our cloud services in order to allow us to help protect the asset. Same thing with, Defender for Endpoint. No, it's built into the OS, but if it's an agent, if it's running on a mobile device that's not Windows or Mac OS, Linux, etc. And good point. AV clients are agents, absolutely. Or proxies can be agents, right? Like, so that's a good point, Edward.
Yeah, okay. And I'll say shout out to the MDI team, the Microsoft Defender for Identity. They saw that. And not only did they change the nomenclature, they changed it because that agent was very thirsty, right? But the sensor was much more lightweight, and people were able to do it. I have yet to find anybody that's deploying the taps. Everybody's doing the lightweight gateway stuff now. But yeah, it's how you present it. Yeah, how you present it. You got to know your room. You got to read the crowd. Right. Speaking
of knowing your room, Gary looks like he's yeah, exactly. Gone to a higher place. Yeah.
He wanted to be an MVP, and I'm using my godly might.
Yeah.
Go ahead and get him on it. Yeah. Hey, Gary, you're in the South. You're gonna have to give your
North Carolina.
So the heat you're getting it is.
Oh yeah. It's 102 at the airport right now.
Yeah, it was 103 there. Yeah, it's 103 there. Yeah.
Gary, so as coming with a development background, obviously you're probably enjoy doing KQL. What is your take on ASIM parsers and the level of effort to develop them to really be part of the overall implementation? Or are you telling customers to say, kind of roll your own ASIM parsers and don't follow the specific specifications that are available for, let's say, a process or a network connection? Where do you stand on that from level of effort from the ASIM parser standpoint? And with a developer background, I'm sure you're having fun with that.
Yeah, I think the ASIM project is great. There is a lot of work up front that you need to do if you're going to do your own, but it's going to be well worth it in the long run. It's just like everything else, you got a lot of work up front to automate the actions you're going to be performing later on.
Yeah, I would tell customers that if using the deployed or the provided one for you is not digestible and you got to do it yourself, involve a partner. Involve someone like Sock Prime or Blue Voyant or somebody like. Let someone come help you because the starting is the hardest. Once you get rolling, inertia, right? But folks get, they get a little dissuaded, and at the very beginning trying to do these things. By no means am I an expert parser writer. I'm the cut and paste. I'm a cut and paste master. Do it that
Well, there's
way.
another example of where that could be a potential poor first impression. If you struggle on your own and can't get it going, and then maybe you look elsewhere as opposed to getting assistance, right? And obviously I'm a consultant, so it's within my best interest to say things like that. But it's true. We all need help. And security solutions are challenging, and letting them drag out and not implementing things correctly it's got to be one of the worst things you can do. You just got to tackle it head on. You just spend a little money, but do it.
It's Microsoft makes it so easy to have playgrounds to work with stuff. People have to fail forward, and that's really the key is to fail forward, and you're going to learn a ton by doing that.
Yeah, it's you got to put the time in. I learned that when you do this, as long as at least me, Franklin, and Gary, sometimes try by fire is not the best way anymore. Because I remember the 2 o'clock in the mornings, and I was like, I am too old for that. Let me go ahead and do the front work on it and just throw some time in. And I learned this from Franklin. Franklin and I have known each other almost 3 years now. And he totally helped me revamp my study habits for getting certification when I started going out to GAC certs. And basically he called me out as a BSer, man. You're not putting time in it. You don't do this, you will not succeed. So I tell all technology professionals, no matter what your level are, you're going to learn more when you off work than when you are in your own work, right? I stay up in the middle of the night. Well, I used to. I go to bed at 9 o'clock at night now because I'm old. But I wake up 3 in the morning, and if I see, I come in.
9 o'clock is the middle of the night for him.
It's the middle of the night for me.
How did you even survive staying up till 1 a.m. the other night? Like, I don't know. Don't worry about answering that.
I was very grouchy.
Yeah, you were. Gary, question from chat. Dean L44. Hey, Gary, how is drinking from the Microsoft fire hose?
So much fun. Last week was pretty much a blur. A lot of meetings, but I think it was because of the timing more than anything else. Everybody had their meetings for the end of the year.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And then we had the 3-hour orientation, and then the 1 hour healthcare and 1 hour Microsoft Tools meetings. Plus, you have all the required training.
Right.
So it adds up.
And then you need to spend at least a week making all of your Outlook mail rules so that everything goes into subfolders.
I have a rule that once June 30th hits, everything in my inbox goes to another folder. I'm only looking at FY23 stuff.
I like that. I also started fresh, but I read everything. I'm a zero inboxer. It gets a little OCD sometimes.
I cannot do it. I can't be overwhelmed. I'm drowning in these emails, and but this is the quiet period at Microsoft. You got to take advantage of it. Big shout out to Franklin once again for helping me instill good habits. I renewed all of my certs. They're not due to September. Get this done now. Don't be Brody and let your AZ-103 expire.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I did.
103 expire because that test is hard. That AZ-103 is hard.
Well, I don't know what it's like now. When I was looking at the refresh, and it was like we had nothing on containers or any of that when it was the 103. So yeah, anyway, yes, don't let your certs lapse. Don't be like me and let a cert lapse, even though it was summertime. Get on it. Yeah.
You rather be out golfing and riding on your boat, having good time.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing all of these months until the great winter for Canada comes, and then we have to recede to our igloos with our moose.
Hey, as totally off podcast topic, but let me just ask you a geographic question, Brody. How far is Calgary from Charlotte in a flight?
I know that because I did that. It's a 4-hour flight, 4 and a bit to Atlanta, and then it's like an hour or less from Atlanta.
Okay.
5.
Yeah,
Ish.
you probably add one more on. Yeah, so
Yeah.
I'm just trying to figure out if I come to Calgary, how much this is going to consume my time in there. Okay, I got it.
Yeah, 5 hours.
Because I want to see this huge, cow punching thing that you guys do every year.
The Calgary Stampede, not cow punching, but a fantastic outdoor show, is starting next week. So book your flight now, Edward.
I don't have loan money like you, man. I had to
Really?
fly.
Really?
I had to fly points. Everything left.
I love points. I love flying on points.
So, Gary, we will allow you to have your, we're 6:07. You get to close the show out when you want to close it out. But talk about anything that you want to convey, announce, talk about, and just say, hey, if you just give our listeners some of this so they can come back on next week.
Probably the one thing I will say, since I just got through the process, is don't be discouraged if you apply to Microsoft. You may not get it the first time, and it may take forever, but definitely just, keep working at it, keep checking. There may be jobs that pop up, but I will say that this one that I have, it just happened. I looked at jobs.microsoft.com and I saw it. So I applied for it. It took a while to get it, but I must admit I was a little discouraged at times, but you stick to it, check to see what's going on. If you get any emails or anything, make sure you respond to them as quickly as you can.
I think that also what is exacerbating the hiring process, not just Microsoft, everybody, is the pandemic. Everything is so virtual, so everything has this additional layer of stuff. You would think it would be the opposite, right? But you're right. And then for those who don't know the Microsoft process, Microsoft, they're not doing all of the stuff that's necessary to get you on. That's a third party, and then they get you in once you're done, right? And and the time it takes. But Microsoft has introduced something called always hiring. And so they're trying to make sure that the talent is always at least being addressed rather than before the need comes in. But yeah, I tried to get a position at Microsoft 10 years ago, more than that now, 15, when the ATS position was first created. And I didn't have enough experience. And they said, well, we can make you a TAM. I don't want to be on TAM. That was probably one of my worst professional mistakes ever. I should have took that TAM position. But I didn't know that once you're at Microsoft, you can go anywhere you want. You do 18 to 24 months. You can go anywhere you want to do. Just got to get in, right? And so, yeah, don't be scared. That's good advice for those that definitely follow us on Discord and looking at how do I get in? What do I apply for everything? Let someone disqualify you. Don't disqualify yourself.
Absolutely. Go read it. If there are people on LinkedIn, even just throwing a message out to somebody who's active on LinkedIn, ask them about their role, start a conversation, network, learn more about it before you get into the interview process. It's a fantastic
for a lot of
company.
people that don't know this story, because we have a lot of new listeners. Here's my recommendation when you're interviewing with Microsoft, and this kind of got me disqualified. So I was, a recruiter contacted me. I was going through the process to get a job at Microsoft. And at the same time, I get contacted by a Microsoft attorney because I own the domain name visualstudio.com, also visualinterdev.com and so on. I wasn't really using it. I was annoyed because people were calling me for tech support, so I was very annoyed with the domain name, right? So the first thing the Microsoft attorney says to me is we're going to have fraud charges brought up on you because you have not updated your contact information with Network Solutions. It's not even like, hello, how are you? Hey, I'm a fan of Microsoft. All you have to say, here's a copy of Visual Studio. I'm on my way. You have to understand this was a whole big time of domain squatting back in those days and a lot of lawsuits going around. I'm like, really? So, of course, just to be a jerk, I'm like, hey, I've had these domain names for 10 years, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever. They cost me $30 a year. So you have to repay me for what I've spent on the domains only, knowing this would actually make an entire, legal process internally and be more expensive for them to get that approval than the actual check that I was getting. But just to be a jerk. So I go back to the people that are interviewing me and I say, okay, will it impact my chances if Microsoft's threatening to bring me up on fraud charges? I never heard from them again. So I guess that's something you shouldn't say in an interview.
And weird how you don't have MVP. Weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's weird why the SharePoint team hates you too. Frankly, I can't keep defending you. I don't know what's going on. You got deviant behavior. Hey, but I would have said to them, because I don't like to take mess for someone who's trying to bully. I'm like,
You're
how's
like
that?
really
Edward,
garbly. We'll let
Can you get
Brody
another
take us out.
Yeah.
And we'll see you next week, Edward. Well, you keep working on that router that you're talking about not working, and we'll let Brody take us out.
Yeah. So if anybody has any AOL CDs they'd like to donate to Edward, please
Well,
contact us on Discord, and we'll be happy to send it to him.
It's not that. To my listeners, I have a lab. I was trying to do this Cisco firepower thing, so I took my Cisco Meraki out and put the ASA in, and it's garbage. So the firmware is like 2007 on it or something. So I apologize. Not very professional of me. I should have just put the Meraki back in place. Stop it, Brody.
Don't let it happen again. And always use a red Ethernet cable. Everybody knows they're the fastest.
Exactly.
Oh,
There you
yeah.
go. Gary agrees.
That's a scientific fact. But Gary, thank you so much. Let me tell you something about this show. You're a friend of the show. You're a guest of the show. You don't have to wait for an invite. If you got something that you want to put out there, coerce your and encourage your teammates on CXC to come on board. The more the merrier. The more the merrier, because our listeners like this stuff and they get it. And we may not always answer a lot of questions on the show, but we give them places to go look. Right. So they know, hey, I heard about this. Let me go research this, which I think is probably one of the strongest points of our show. We always have people thinking. Like I said, now my video says it's on, but it's not on. Let me go take this dumb firewall out of here. I don't know what I was doing. Well, thank you so much. If you don't have any parting comments, we'll go ahead and say goodbye to our listeners. We'll see you the same time next week. I forget who we have on.
Gary, what was that blog that you run again? You want to give a shout out? Speaking of the shout out episode, the address for your blog? Yes.
GaryBushey.com.
Perfect. There we go. We'll put that in the show notes. Everybody go check out GaryBushey.com. One of the best blogs out there.
It is. It's on Oprah Winfrey's bestsellers list too.
All right,
shout out
next week, everyone.
Big shout out Oprah Winfrey. Come on the show. Talk about OSPF.
Shout out Twitch. Shout out Discord. Shout
out
everyone
next week. Thanks, Chad. You guys are great tonight in the chat, I have to say.
Yeah, chat. Thank you. Hey, Carol. Oh, by the way, Frank, we need to get like an ending audio thing for our podcast.